So good morning, everyone. I see we have some early birds going on here. So we'll sort of get started in the next 5 minutes. So refresh your coffees and I'll do some technical tinkering on my side. Meanwhile, we are using a new webinar platform. It's called GoToMeeting, which some of you are probably familiar with. Also worth mentioning, my dear colleague Rina will be joining us here and acting as a moderator. I'll be turning off my webcam because I want to save up on some precious screen estate so everyone has the benefit here if you're on smaller screens or mobile devices and similar. So off we go. So this is part 2 of the How to Company series, and this is the part where we start talking about whether or not you should create your own competitor. So the idea here today is to explore a bit more hands-on what toolings are out there, what does being cloud native mean, being agile, Kanban, and digital transformation, and what does all these things mean to you? But first, a sort of a short recap before we get started. A recap back to what we talked about in part 1. For starters, this is me on a good day. I'm the chief evangelist and senior advisor at Base Farm, also the VP of Big Data. I'm one of the co-founders of the Swedish part of Base Farm, and I've been working at Base Farm now for the past 17 years plus. And I've been stuck at home for over 10 weeks now. During this time, I've also had some side activities. I part founded and bootstrapped the Swedish branch of Eurocloud, and prior to the life of Base Farm, I was a founding member of the core team of Telenor in Sweden. And prior to that, I was the CTO at the South Municipal Hospital here in Stockholm. So that's ever so short about me. Moving on. So last time we talked about how to be a modern company, where we focused on the definition of being modern and why you should be modern. I'm just going to recap some of the key findings, might call it. And worth mentioning, for those of you who never saw the first part, I highly recommend you view that video recording because we went through some rather interesting examples of Adobe, Chevron, Zappos, and similar modern companies who perhaps not always perceived as being all that modern. So some great takeaways from that was, first of all, your company culture doesn't have to be all ping pong tables and free beer. Simply providing employees with a sense of safety, well-being, and creating a culture where everyone is looked out for each other can easily suffice. All these are quotes from these companies we had as example. You should dedicate your team with the task of coming up with events and programs to promote community. A great company culture doesn't happen on its own. And you should hire according to cultural fit first and foremost. This forces you to define what your company culture actually is. Another key takeaway, when your employees are completely immersed in the same interests as your company, the culture propels itself forward almost on its own. And a culture that is owned and propelled by the same people puts value in their voices. They're sort of living the company. Lastly, putting trust in your employees goes a long way towards a positive company culture because trust leads to independent employees who help your company grow. So these are the sort of key findings or the summaries or takeaways from the last session. So on to today's topic. It's why should I create my own competitor? Well, not that it's perhaps an obvious first thought, but trust me, we'll get to that as we progress here. It's always tricky to start with something only talking about the end result. But sort of to kickstart this, the thought process, I want you to look to yourself for your own company. I'm certain that you have some offering or service or product that is one of your core products. You took a risk once or some time down the line and choose the sort of, let's call it the narrow path. and you spend a lot of time and money exploring, investing, struggling through the pain and risk of creating something unique, and hopefully a long time later, you finally came out on top. And perhaps now it's one of your money-making machines, your milk cow, call it what you like. But as time passes, you start to notice some new competition out there. Competitors that obviously just copied your end product or result, but they seem to be able to move faster, keeping lower prices than you, and they are able to add on new features or value modifications faster than you. How is this possible? And how do we make them stop? Or rather, what are we missing here? Why can't we even match them? Because yesterday we were the kings here. What went wrong? So to make this perhaps more tangible, I'm trying to use an analogy throughout this session. It's I'm referring to, let's say you own a t-shirt store and you've been running this t-shirt store for the past 15 years or so. And it's a brick and mortar store, as you say. It's a physical store. That's how you started it. It's sort of around the corner thingy. It's very trendy, and you design t-shirts. And also, you're very proud of your craft. You're able to deliver custom prints, and people can customize things to their own liking. And you have a great stock of t-shirts, so they're always available. So you can always go to the store and pick it up. And of course, you even have a home page where you customers can order from. They can contact you to get the designs they want. They can engage with you there, and you can offer a home delivery or in-store pickup at no shipping costs. So why are you losing out? How come someone else is running ahead here? Well, let's look at things in reference to the first session here. What's out there? Well, there are new ways of working, and they're all driven by new technical possibilities. Remember the first part, we talked about modern companies uses technology as a catalyst for change. I picked a t-shirt company not by just randomness, because the t-shirt company is actually the fourth most common startup business as of 2019 in the world. Plus, to everyone, whether you're rich or poor, you own a t-shirt and you will buy new ones. So I think it's sort of a relevant analogy here. What's out there? Okay, let's say you imagine you're having a discussion, a meeting with your marketing team. And the topic is, does our customer prefer the color blue or orange for the new t-shirt design? Your company has a website. Let's say you have thousands of visitors every day and they buy your products there. And now imagine you have your discussion, you're like 6 people in the room, and from out of nowhere, one of the marketing guys just says orange, and he flips the screen and he shows you this graph. What has happened here, he said that he's basically did a live A/B test of your customers. So what he did was that during the discussion, he had the ability to create 2 different versions of this store site with one orange and one blue version of the new design. And since you have good data on your users and your demographics, you know that the would-be buyer is the age between 30 and 45. He could identify those users and then present them when they logged in. They actually get presented, half of them gets directed to the blue version and the other half gets directed to the orange version. And you instantly recognize the fact that the ones who are presented with the orange one, they retain longer, they actually have a higher conversion rate. They actually do the purchase. So this perhaps sounds amazing, but also he asked the team that, okay, should I decide now to publish this? So we will push for the orange one. You will still be able to order the blue one, but we don't that color lead. We chose the orange one. Perhaps sounds like black magic, but the question is, how do you get there? And there are 2 key components to getting there. The first component is methodology, how you work, how you culture, how you organize things. And the other thing is that you have the right tech in place and made available to the right people. And the first thing is something that is often overlooked is the methodology of Kanban. Kanban, in short, when you want something done, you work as an individual or a team or as a part of the team. Kanban, the core idea of it is that you're only able to do a given number of things simultaneously well. So the idea here, instead of juggling doing 9 things at the same time, not really getting done with any of them, instead, the idea is that you are capable of doing 3 things maximum, but those things will get done all the way. This is something that comes from the world of production, and keeping things going mechanically is also very much used in the IT world, but it's very applicable to any kind of work where you produce things. When you have things to do and you want them done, and you want to be able to adjust and reprioritize what you're doing as things changes around you. So the thought process is as simple as this whiteboard. You have an idea, you put it on a post-it note. This is what I think I want to do. This is the new idea. It's just a one-liner. And then you gather your team and you have a talk and you discuss, okay, which of these are actually viable? Which one of these ideas are in line with our mission and vision and our strategy or our ethical values? Or will this retain customers, our employees? Does this relate to our core values? And if do, you move that post-it over to the to-do list. And then you, as a group, every day you decide what are we going to work on. So we decide 3 things. You move 3 of these post-its into the doing phase, and then you go off and doing this for the day. And then you iterate. That means every morning you work through who did what yesterday and what you're working on today, and you reevaluate whether you should reprioritize. If we should not do these, perhaps we should do 3 other things because the world around us has changed. So this is the core idea surrounding this. And once again, the core idea is instead of juggling 9 things and never really getting done with any of them, or you do 9 things and when you're done, they're just half baked. They are just good enough. Instead, it's better to focus on doing a few things but doing them really well. And the brilliance of this is they can also easily communicate this to the world around you. The other teams can see what you're doing and you can see what their priorities in doing right now. So you don't have to stop everything and to explain what you're doing. Everyone knows the process. And you can also use this methodology on yourself as an individual, because let's say you as a person are part of several teams. This means that you can then communicate to each teams what you will be doing and why and what's on your to-do list. And the best bracket of all is the one called done. And it's just a moral self-booster. That's when you are enjoying moving the post-it note from doing to done. So you can also communicate to the world and to yourself, enjoy the fact of being done with something. So this is the core idea of Kanban. It's a key component of working in a modern way. It's also a very key component to have an open mindset when it comes to working agile and being flexible. Next core thing that you need to have in place when you're working on how to have this orange or blue t-shirt discussion is that you need to be working in an agile manner. And I know, yes, agile is the word that is overhyped, overused, over everything, but it does have its point. However, it's sort of been hijacked by the software world, but it doesn't come from the software world actually. It comes from the physical car industry, Toyota and similar. But the core idea behind it is that you plan what you want to do, you design it, you develop it, you test it, you deploy it, and then you review what you deployed, and then you cycle it over and over. So it's continuous improvements. So you often talk about continuous integration and deployment, and then you launch your new solution or a piece of software or a new piece of clothing in increments. So instead of building the ultimate web page, for instance, instead you just launch a couple of buttons and then you review it and then you add things as your user base asks you for what to do. But you can't start here because you have to figure out what's your starting point. And to do this, you need some sort of vision. This is, we're going to create t-shirts, or we're going to create a t-shirt store. And it's going to be the best, or it's going to be the most used. You have to figure out what's the vision here. And then you have what's called user stories. This is a story is what you would describe how you would experience using this. When I'm in the meeting, I want to be able to change things live. I want to be able to ask the system about how many users would prefer the color orange. That's a user story. And then you add it to the sprint backlog. And this is where you have the Scrum Masters. It's a role in itself where you have someone who caters and organizes that you on a daily basis do a daily stand-up and you review what we're supposed to be doing next. So this is in very short and brief explanation of the topic of being agile and the Scrum process. However, the process itself isn't flawed, but because how come everyone doesn't use it and isn't implemented? Well, the problem is the idea as a methodology isn't really flawed. The problem is that organizations are usually flawed because they're stuck in doing the way that you always do. So this is obviously something that is relatable to software people. But let's expand on this. Let's do this as a business process instead. It's what they did in the orange and blue discussion. It's figuring out whether you should have 25 colors on your t-shirts or you identify that you only need 5 colors. So your business vision is obviously launching the ultimate t-shirt store with the ultimate capacities, and you then have end user stories. And this is where you could start using this methodology for your strategies as well. Because just a thought exercise, let's say you have an IT strategy, you're the CIO or you're the CEO. Wouldn't be surprised if your IT strategy or planning is based on a 12-month planning cycle. But that really isn't going to make things easier, because what you want to do is be able to incrementally update your strategy, because in some fields things change so rapidly, so it's much more smart to have like a 6-month cycle or 3 months or even a week. You will adapt your strategies on a weekly basis. You have your stand up and then you adjust your strategies accordingly. So it works just fine on any business visions or whatever you like. It's fully applicable. So I highly recommend you looking into the agile way of doing business. And there's actually a friend company of ours in Berlin, they're called Code 11, who does amazing work in explaining this in more at depth and length. So I highly recommend you looking into that. So to make a point of whether you are perceived as agile or not, and take this with a pinch of salt, if you need a project manager for any or every change you make, you should have sprints. So that's a sort of that's a no-no. You always have to define something, how it looks in the end, even before you start. Then you not have an agile mindset. You have to create a complete budget before you even have started something. That's the same thing. You're not allowing your friends or colleagues to try things out, do the labs approach. And if you don't iterate your strategies as things change, because they will always change, so why fight it? Embrace it instead. So that's the idea behind the agile methodology. These are just checkpoints. Well then, what about the cloud then, you may ask? Because this sounds perhaps all fine and dandy, but where does the cloud come into all of this? Well, the cloud should be a key business catalyst. It sort of removes the need for planning or investing in technology that you don't know if you actually need, but you want to try it out. Before the cloud, from a lot of IT perspective, if you wanted to try something, you had to buy the entire Lego box. And let's say you needed a small, you have to choose whether you want the small box, large box, or medium box. In the cloud, it allows you to pick single pieces of Legos and mix and match. To overemphasize things, perhaps, the classic way of creating something is using a monolith design of things. And I'm going to use, for starters, software as a reference. Perhaps not everyone can relate to this, but bear with me. It will hopefully makes more sense as we progress here. If I were to build a Lego Taj Mahal, you can buy the small box or the big box. Okay, so this is the cloud, and compared to the ready shipped box of Taj Mahal, this is a loose set of pieces that you can combine in any way, shape, or form you like. But the key thing here is if you manage to build Taj Mahal out of this by accident or by design or by choice, you can also replicate it in a very simple way. And it also allows you to change things around. So in the Taj Mahal analogy, that means that you are able to remove the right tower. You don't have to worry that the left tower will be impacted. You can add on new towers without caring for how the existing things work. If you were to translate this to the t-shirt world, that would be the ability to pick a t-shirt in any different shapes and forms, and you can mix and match. And if you were able to deliver t-shirts in the cloud model, that means also you find that the consumers like a certain setup, you're able to instantly ship 1 million of those units within the same day. And you're also able to do this without keeping anything in stock. So this is sort of the translation of how the cloud works in the physical world, if you were to use the t-shirt analogy. To deep dive a bit more on the monolith versus modern way, and once again, this is always for you to understand how things are tied together and how to get to the point when you can have that, once again, discussion when you identify how can I create my own smarter and better competitor. Let's say you have your entire e-commerce site. You have ordering, inventory, billing, accounter, user interface, database. It's one piece of software with over 100,000 lines of code. And the problem here is that there's only a few developers who understands it fully. And if they want to change anything, they need to always consider the big picture. They always need to understand if I change anything in the data access layer or the database, I will probably break what will break in the business logic. Or if I change something here, then the user interface will break. I need always understand how things are tied together. And that's time consuming. It also means that your developers or product developers, they can never let go of the solution. They always have to be connected to it. So what you do then is in the cloud way, you go from the monolithic architecture to what's called a microservice-oriented architecture. And what you simply do is that you break up all these parts. You have one part for the accounting, one for billing, and one for inventory, one for ordering, one for user interface, and they are all self-contained. So they exchange and communicate with each other over what's called API or interfaces. You agreed upon how each component talks to the other component. There's no need then for the billing people to understand how accounting works or how the database works or how the user interface works, because they can focus on their own components. That allows you to work and improve on certain parts individually without breaking everything else. This allows for flexibility and experimentation. So you're not in the cloud. If you just move your existing technical platform into virtual service, call it like a lift and shift, you don't match the cloud pay-as-you-go model with your end consumers, meaning that if you pay as you go for these resources you use, but you still make your customers decide on monthly payments or upfront payments. Same goes for their upfront. If your business model depends on you charging something upfront before even getting started, you're not really adopting the cloud model. It means usually cloud services means that you're able to get something for free for the free trial period, 1 week, 2 weeks. And you should also offer a freemium version of your service to sort of catch them. And that's how you also save money and time on sales. What you lose on initial revenues, you gain in lower sale costs. And if you can't instantly scale your business up or down depending on demand, you're not thinking the cloud model. And once again, if you need to keep stock, you're not doing this the right way. So going back to the why should I create my own competitor? Of course, you should aim for using the cloud model and components when you start building your own self-competing offering. Set up a mission and copy your key product, and you should be able to launch this first iteration within a week. Now you should need to start thinking in which pieces of Legos are out there available to you for your unique product, and not think about how you did it the first time. And you also need to be able to launch this within a very narrow and tight window. This also is a key point, a key exercise. So you start now connecting the Kanban and Agile and cloud methodology, and you should connect those components with what's our mission, what's our vision, who are we, what's our purpose. That should be the only guidance you need, because once again, you should limit yourself here to just launch the first bare minimum of your existing product. And you need to challenge yourself to do this within a week, because you know how it looks in the end. So what Legos are out there that for me to use in order to sort of skip ahead so I can gain leverage. To exemplify, if you're sort of lacking in mission and vision and how this works, let's use Amazon as an example here. Every person on earth shall buy at least one thing from us once per year. Whatever they buy from us, it shall start shipping the same day, and we will never keep anything in stock. So this is their mission and vision. That's what guides them in every product. You can have this as an example. You have to figure out the how on all of this. What components are out there, and which partners can do the shipping, and how close to the point of production do I need to be, etc., etc. And just to sort of keep to the analogy of the t-shirt shop here, I took myself the liberty of creating one actually. So what I did is simply that I went to Shopify. I used those templates which are available there, search for templates for t-shirt stores and the necessary components, and I ended up with these components. Let's call this which actually called. It's called globalization, to put it simply, because all these components, production, shipping, custom printing, volume discounts, order tracking, all these are Legos in my e-store, my t-shirt store. And the idea here is that you don't do everything yourself. You combine the components. You combine in the cloud world, you call this PaaS component, platform as a service or software as a service components. But the same thing goes for when you produce and deliver your t-shirts in the end here. And yeah, sure, some may say globalization, now that Corona is here, that will end, but no, it's here to stay. It can never go back. So what can happen that the point of production is today China, but tomorrow it's just going to change the point of production. So perhaps Turkey or other more neighboring countries, but still it will be a global ecosystem where you just shift. So what you do here is you remove the China Lego and you put in a different production source of origin instead. So, but the principle remains the same. It's there for you to leverage and be able to deliver on global capacity. This is what I ended up with. It's my mock-up store. It took me about 10 minutes to get here, actually, just using templates. These t-shirts are actually ready to ship, and you can have your favorite memes or pictures on them within 24 hours. I have actually no idea what color the delivery van will have, and I don't know how big their wheels are, and I don't have to care about it because they're just components in the delivery chain. I focus on creating products that are it's there for my business or my end users. So this entire topic is really what's called digital transformation. It's creating your own competitor is about embracing digital transformation, trying to do something you already know, but in a new way, and having the way of working in place and the culture in place to allow you to challenge yourself to create a new version of yourself and see how that compares to your existing you. If we go back to the blue and orange t-shirt, that is a data-driven discussion. And if you want to compete with the new ones out there, this is the key. How much data you do already have on your existing customer base? Because this is your leverage versus the newcomers, because they don't have that. You have an existing customer base. All you need to do is to dive into that and make it available and start tapping and getting insights from your existing data. And you should get these insights and build your own competitor using cloud components as Legos. I said initially that the technology is the catalyst for change. Well, competition is also a very healthy catalyst for change. You should embrace it. So if you're going to start over and start something new, you should start with a big leap ahead. And your leverage is the fact that you already know your customer base. You know what they're looking for, what works. So you should add to that. And also, finally, there is some philosophy connected to this, because one thing you need to have in the back of your mind is always you should be able to run, optimize, and innovate as a constant. These are all constants. And when I say run, I mean when you put something in production, you need to make sure that it's being operated and run at as low cost and high quality as possible and as securely as possible. But you also need to optimize and iterate on your existing products, existing pieces of software, existing site or customer deliveries. You must make sure that it's constantly improving. And that's a cycle in itself. And then you also should iterate on your digital strategies constantly to constantly add on and become more and more improved there instead of having one big boom plan. The transformation could be I simply add components, I add AI, I add big data. And specifically also the last part here that is somewhat an unknown to many is the fact that you need to monitor this in a new way. So usually you monitor success just looking at what's my revenues and what my EBITDA and similar. Instead, you should perhaps monitor the success of your experience of your site or your service or your employees, or how the customers experience that you are true to your own values, you're true to your goals, we represent with the thing that we're looking for. We map our mission and vision, it's all correlate. So these things that you are able to monitor this doesn't necessarily have to be technical exercise, but you have to monitor the fact that you're true to your own missions and visions. That's wrapping things up for the how to create your own competitor for the day. And we'll now come to the Q&A if anyone wants to ask questions. And of course, as always, I'm available for questions afterwards via email, or you can look me up over LinkedIn. So fire away if you have any. Rina, have you picked up any questions during, or is everything clear?
Yes, everything is clear. There are no questions. Thanks.
Oh, great. Well, then I won't be keeping people any longer. So enjoy your Tuesday and see you on the next session. Bye for now.